2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Power of Music Thinking. My name is Christoph Zürn, and this is the podcast for people with a musical heart and a wicked job. We're looking for stories, insights and tools from the big world of music to inspire leaders and followers to listen, tune, play and perform in whatever field you're operating. Let's talk about books today. What was the last book that inspired you? Was it a novel, a non-fiction book, a design book, a music book, or a cookbook? Well, think about that just for a moment. Because I love books. I like the handy format of bundled knowledge in one item. Although I'm a slow reader, so I don't read a book every day, but I live with them. And sometimes I'm reading several books at the same time. I jump from one to the other, like surfing on the internet, in a mix of different genres and styles. And beside music books, I love speculative fiction novels from, for example, William Gibson and Neil Stephenson. Because you first have to understand the setting, learn the lingo, and try to imagine what happens. Your brain is in full steam. So from Stevenson, you might know his Baroque cycle, or his famous Snow Crash, or the best-selling Cryptonomicon. But let's talk shortly about his Anthem from 2008. Anthem is set on a fictional planet called Arp. It plays in a distant future. Thousands of years before the event in the novel, the planet's intellectuals entered monastic communities to protect their activities from the collapse of society. The intellectuals are separated from the secular society and are banned from possessing or operating the most advanced technology. They are generally allowed to communicate with people outside the walls of the monastic community only once every year, or decade, or century, or millennium, depending on the particular vows they have taken. So, let's hear a bit of the Thousander chant from the album Islet, music from the world of Anthem, containing 8 experimental vocal compositions by David Stutz, and you can find the link in the show notes. So this is the sound of the Thousanders, people that once in 1,000 years can have contact outside. And it sounds very distant, but it also sounds very ancient, so interesting. So it's like time traveling and So there is speculative sound in a speculative fiction novel. But let's talk about music, or better, music thinking, which means books beyond just music. Books that directly or indirectly influenced my way of thinking about the world. If I had to pick 3 books that formed my sound perspective in an early stage, first would be Nada Brahma, The World is Sound by Joachim Ernst Berend. The next one is The Soundscape, Our Sonic Environment and the Tuning of the World by R. Murray Schafer. And the third one would be The Glass Bead Game by Hermann Hesse. So, about the first. I once met author Joachim Ernst Berend backstage at a concert at the Jazz Open in Stuttgart. And his humble and friendly personality really blew me away. You must know that he was a kind of a superstar who traveled the world and brought jazz and the then called world music to Germany. And he was the author of more than 20 books and produced numerous concerts, radio programs, and records. So, in Nada Brahma, The World is Sound, he brings together science, cybernetics, spirituality, and cultural patterns across the world. He reveals the importance of sound in shaping cultural and spiritual life worldwide. His book is full of connections and relations and makes clear that Nada Brahma is not just something esoteric. He says, here comes a quote, "The path to Nada Brahma was a path of living. Only later was life experience followed by reading and theoretical understanding." And nearly every chapter has a long list of listening tips. Today we would say it's a playlist, or you can find quite a lot of them on Spotify. Just type in Nada Brahma. And I reread the book after 30 years, and it is still relevant for me, especially in these times of change. The next one is the soundscape, a term coined by Hermann Schafer, is our sonic environment, the ever-present array of noises with which we all live. So this book is about the shift from hearing to listening. It's about understanding that we are 24/7 getting information through our ears, and that the pollution of our sonic environment is as real as other toxic wastes that can enter our bodies. So the book draws on insights from acoustics, sound measurements, and how we perceive sound in different situations. It is one of the most quoted books by people who work in sonic branding, architecture, and laws on sonic pollution. And you find tips for acoustic designers, deep listening exercises, and there are practical chapters with lots of graphics and lists like, for example, the soniferous garden, a garden that is also an acoustic delight and experience. So, what both books have in common, there's a link with a novel from the mid of the 20th century, The Glass Bead Game by Hermann Hesse, his last full novel that won the Nobel Prize in Literature. So, The Glass Bead Game takes place at an unspecified date, centuries in the future. Hey, here we go again. So, speculative fiction. Hesse suggested that he imagined the book's narrator writing around the start of the 25th century. So yes, link with anything from the beginning and speculative fiction. So the Glass Bead Game is a kind of a synthesis of human learning in which themes such as musical phrase or philosophical thought are stated. As the game progresses, associations between the themes become deeper and more varied. Although the Glass Bead Game is described lucidly, so you don't really know what the game is, the rules and mechanics are not explained in detail. So there's still a lot of room for imagination. So, when I was working on my book, The Power of Music Thinking, I just realized that the Glass Bead Game is a connector between the soundscape and the Nada Brahma, and I reread the book again after many years and found it worthwhile to integrate one of the quotes in my book where Hesse describes an ancient Chinese story that draws the relation between music and the state of a country. Hear the quote. "The music of a well-ordered age is calm and cheerful, and so is its government. The music of a restive age is excited and fierce, and its government is perverted. And the music of a decaying state is sentimental and sad, and its government is imperiled." So, interesting thought. So if you want, you can compare this to the latest elections we had in the US and Germany, make a study on how you listen and what you listen. But let's end here. So these are my 3 books that in some way have influenced the power of music thinking. And there are many others inspiring books. But let's stop here for a moment, because today I also have a guest. And we talk about his new book that is out in Dutch and French and soon in English. So let's dive into it, into the conversation we had in the Music Thinking headquarters here in Nijmegen. All the way from Belgium, and we're just sitting here in the dark. And Gert, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
With pleasure. Thanks for having me here in this musical thinking studio. What a pleasure. I'm a Belgian. I was chief digital officer of one of the banks, Belfius, and who was one of the first banks who took mobile first as strategy. And there we became #1 mobile banking app in the world, and still Belfius today is one of the top 10 best mobile banking apps in the world. And I wrote a book about it called Rebel Rebel, reference to David Bowie and his song, but also his interview in 1999 where he says, "Internet is the new rock and roll, to be rebellious." And I wrote a book about how music thinking in this technology era is an amazing inspiration for digital leadership. And we need digital leadership. Europe is lagging behind. We don't have the big companies like in the Silicon Valley, like in tech worlds. And I think we can do the same. But we must use another way of thinking, not the command and control, not hierarchy, to get these things together. So that's the book Rebel Rebel about.
Wow, so that's what we talk about today. So, Rebel Rebel, that was on the Diamond, what is it, Diamond Age?
Yes.
Diamond Age album, 74?
Diamond Dogs.
Oh, sorry, Diamond Dogs. Right. And we all know this riff, so if you say Rebel Rebel, we also know. Nice, very good. So, we talk about books that inspire us. And we hope that your book is a very inspiring book. But tell us a little bit about how was your journey to write the book, and where is it connected with?
When I became chief digital officer of Belfius, and we went for mobile first, there was nothing. It was the smartphone was there, but the apps were not already dominant. And IT became more important because now the identity of your company on the smartphone, that is marketing, communication, IT, distribution, it's everything together. I'm not a technology guy. I'm not an IT guy. So I collaborated like a rock and roll band with all these divisions, and we made our own style. And that's how we got that far. And I used a lot of music. We did a roadshow called You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet with a mashup drummer. We partnered with Lost Frequencies, with Are You With Me, to take the people with us. Because at that time, people were afraid of digital, like now in AI. People were afraid in the branches that digital would kick them completely out, which is not the case. It is digital plus human in sync. So, and that rock and roll rebel made us that far. And that's when, a year ago, there was a publisher who said, there's a book in your body, combining your two passions, digital and music. And that's how it all set through.
Right. And you're interested in music longer than 1 year, I assume. But was it more the music, or were there books that were on your way? Because I talked about books before, books that inspired me and that shaped my way of thinking. And if you use Rebel as your cover, what's behind? Are there more influences?
Yeah, one of the first music books for me, besides the rock documentaries and all the documentaries, was the book of David Byrne, How Music Works. Because it was about how he created music, working together with the band, but also producing, distributing. That was a basic, like an encyclopedia of how it works. So that was one of the first books. But then I'm more like a video guy. I love a lot of these rock documentaries from Bob Marley to Nina, where you get an insight, Queen, of course, Elton John, George Michael, where you get an insight on how these people make music, collaborate, are uncertain after a successful album, making the second one, or also performing live. So what is really working behind? So David Byrne as a book, but also combined with a lot of videos I looked for on YouTube. So the rock documentaries, yeah, that's 2 hours, and I think I've seen them all.
How do you find them? Just to ask.
It was first on DVD, and then you get streaming, Netflix. Now there's a lot on YouTube. So yeah, all streaming services. If you, they're on Netflix or on Amazon Prime or.
That's right. But are you searching for music documentaries, or a certain documentary that you want to hear?
There's a trick. First, you're looking for music documentaries, but then the algorithm gets fed. They know that you like music, so you get them proposed. And then on YouTube, I've looked in the preparation of my book, I looked at a lot of videos because I wanted to explain also, not in the book with QR codes linked to YouTube videos, but also in my keynote, I wanted to show how musicians are rebellious. Socio-culturally, they are willing to fight for black rights people, for LGBTQ. What things are normal today, rebels, and a lot of rebels fought for it. A lot of musicians fought for it. Also for gay, I mean, Freddie Mercury, George Michael, Stevie Wonder with Happy Birthday. After Martin Luther King died, he made the song Happy Birthday to get a free day.
So were you searching about the rebel, or when was the idea that you want to do it about rebels?
Because what I could do in a bank is like the most classic conservative company you can find.
Right.
Your money needs to be safe.
Yeah, it has to be safe,
yeah.
Right?
But in technology, when the mobile came up, we were afraid of that Facebook, Google, Apple would take over customer intimacy. And we said, we want to be on the first screen. Because if we're not on the first screen anymore, we do the transactions, but we're losing the customer intimacy. So it was really a struggle for life. And then I got the space of the board. I was in the board, but I got the space like, guys, you can go for it. Because it's almost like a fight, live or die. And then in the way we organize ourselves, it was not known. Now, it is known to do mobile apps and link it to IT and marketing. At that time, it was completely new. As in music, the first mobile banking apps, they sounded bizarre, like a bank is going for mobile first. Now it is evident, like in music, the first time when Jimi Hendrix plays his grungy guitar, probably the first time you heard it on the radio, you said, wow, it's strange. 10 years later, it became normal. And even there, after that, grunge, it is completely distorted guitars. So that's how I found a lot of rebellious ways in organizing it. And I know a lot of digital talents don't have that space in companies to be like rebel. And that's why I called, and in reference to David Bowie's vision about the internet is a new rock and roll, the potential is amazing. It's like a musician telling us what's the potential of technology.
Yeah, can you share with us so that maybe not everybody knows that famous David Bowie quote from 1999? What did he say?
He's interviewed by, at that moment, Paxman by the BBC, one of the main interviews of the BBC. And the guy saying, like, internet is just a tool, very skeptical. And David Bowie says, no.
But hang on, 1999, this was just before the big bubble, before everything was internet, it was a big hype.
It was the first email where you had to wait 2 minutes to get your email in. It was the encyclopedia, was on CD-ROM. Everybody had the same Nokia. We were Discman. It was CD time. So the internet was really in early days. So Paxman was very skeptical, the interviewer. At that time, the BBC was dominant, like TV and radio was BBC. So one channel, one message. Everybody heard the same message. And what David Bowie said was, guys, internet is a new rock and roll. It's pluralism. There are always 2, 3, 4, 5 sides of a question. But at the BBC, you only give one side of a question. And the internet will have a potential that is amazing. And the interaction between user and provider, and he's saying that about music, user, the audience, and provider, the artist, is going to change. There will be other ways. We cannot imagine the potential. And he's even, Paxman is very critical. And then David Bowie says, guys, is there life on Mars? Yes, it has just landed, internet. And he also said, I wanted to be a rebel. And I used music at that time because music was my medium to get my message through. I wanted to have impact. If I would start now, David Bowie said, I would be a collector of records, but I would be into the internet because the internet is a new rock and roll. And now, even today with AI, the words of that interview, I recommend everybody to look at the interview. You can find it on YouTube. David Bowie, Internet Vision 1999, 6 minutes. If you look at that, his vision still stands in the time of AI, where he says it's going to be the potential of what the internet, of what AI can bring, is terrifying, but also exhilarating. We do not know yet where we're going to end, but the potential, and not just one truth, the BBC truth, plural, is there. So that was an amazing interview. So that is partly the reference to Rebel, the title of the book.
So let's take it in. That's 26 years ago, back in time. Yeah. So if we would look 26 years forward in time, oh my God, if we would be David Bowie, what would we say? Would we say the same about AI, where everybody's talking about?
I think it's going to be the same. A lot of companies are saying, wow, it's just a hype. But the speed of AI now in digital is amazing, even way faster than the smartphone. When it was launched by Apple in 2007, it changes. The smartphone became a music player. The iPod was integrated in the phone, and the internet was integrated in the phone. But it took 15, 20 years before mobile came through. Now, with the speed of ChatGPT, DeepSeek, I have never seen that. So the exhilaration and the terrifyingness, I think it's at a higher speed with AI than we saw with mobile and internet.
All right. And funny enough is that we might forget the whole social media thing that started maybe 5 years later, around 2004, with Twitter. LinkedIn was also pretty early. And now we have many, let's say, big tech social media with algorithms that are, not just they're just there to make money for the big for the big tech people, and the whole algorithm is based on making money and not on helping people to be better people.
That's true, but that's part of society. There is, there is something in human being that will look for what's possible.
Yeah.
And there are bad things about it, social media, but also good things. Let me explain why I'm a fan of TikTok. I'm not dancing on TikTok, but instead of looking for hundreds of hours on YouTube, which I did, and to find these fragments, to show you the message, to show in the book, in the keynote, the message about musical thinking. Now I use TikTok. Why? I did for weeks and months all the music fragments that I saw on TikTok. I liked them.
Just liking.
Not more.
Not resharing.
So the algorithm knows I like everything about music. Just send it to me. And every morning I get my newspaper of music thinking of all about Roger Waters, David Gilmour, David Bowie, Frank Zappa. And then it's cool. So I use that algorithm to feed me instead of having to look for. And for example, which was great. Now, Trump and Musk are doing strange things in the United States. The days after that, you get cool TikTok videos. Frank Zappa from 1983, when Reagan was president, when he's saying America, the biggest risk is not communism. It's we're going to a fascist authority. That Green Day, the day after inauguration of Trump, and then Musk with his strange behavior when Green Day is changing the lyrics of American Idiot. The day after, I'm not a part of an Elon agenda. American Idiot, the song. So I like this. It's rebel. We need rebels also against what's happening in the States. And musicians will be the first ones to state it, because the big CEOs of the tech companies, they have to stand behind Trump. You don't dare.
Absolutely. That's what we see literally behind Trump. Hey, hang on. Thinking about rebel, would it be also rebel to switch off? If we all would switch off collectively, this would be a real rebel, because a lot of people wouldn't earn the money that they thought they would.
Yeah, but I think there will be some value in having that social connection that we can't miss anymore.
But hang on, the way how you use TikTok is that social. You just like everything and then you get it in.
Yeah,
so.
But only the things I like. Right. And that's the bad thing. If I do the likes on fascist thing, I get fascist information, and that's tricky. That's the tricky part. But there's also the good part in it. You don't have to look yourself anymore to the books. We're starting with books, which inspire us. So now TikTok is giving me videos, which I don't have to look for anymore. So that's the David Bowie style. It's exhilarating, but also terrifying. So, and that's a difficulty. Europe is regulating AI, digital, which is hard. The States is doing the opposite. There it's big tech can do it all, non-regulated, which is bad also. Yeah, we have to find a way in the middle. We'll see, and probably there's going to be bad things that happen. But again, I like in music. You have one stream of music, and at a certain moment in time, it's enough. And a completely the opposite, punk. You had the disco, the synth pop, and then you had punk. Like grunge came after, very musical style. See, I like, there's always a movement and another movement. Right. Just coming after, and that's what I like. I think that is part of human life, and music also as a medium is amplifying that.
Absolutely. I also think every trend has a counter trend, and that might be the rebel that you mean, right?
Exactly. That is exactly. And some people, Trump and Musk, are rebels. I'm not sure they're real rebels. They're
maybe not anymore.
No. They were probably rebels, but now they got too much power. Yeah. And that's bad. So I'm sure there's a lot of rebelism, and in the States and around the world, against what's happening there, which is a good thing. And I'm sure that musicians, so not only in music, there's rebel, it's also in the messages. If you look at some lyrics, if you look at some lyrics of songs, Under Pressure, David Bowie, and Queen together, Freddie Mercury, it was about burnout in the 70s, in the 80s. Problem is now way bigger. Then they gave that message. See, if you really, U2 was also Sunday Bloody Sunday was about the IRA. So we don't hear these lyrics anymore, but at that time it was amazing, very forceful lyrics. Besides already the sound that was also evolving over time with synthesizers, with computers integrated, electronic dance music, Daft Punk, and the way others. So all that musical evolution combined with the lyrics, with the dare to speak up for the people, music more than the big tech CEOs. I'm curious what will happen. But
so, what about the book? So, is the book about everything that you just said, like the rebels, and you talk about the rebels, or is it also a kind of instruction how to be a rebel?
Well, it's not an instruction. It's written as 4 sides of a double album. So the first side is why digital is rock and roll, and that's because technology is like an evolution. So, and if you don't look at it as rock and roll, as a new sound, a synthesizer, as a new sound you can create, you're not using technology at its maximum. So that's the first. All the examples, my story at Belgium. So that's the first chapter. Second one is false notes. In music, if you play false notes in an orchestra or in a band, what do? You look at each other, or you're saying, avoid that. I think still we're living with a lot of false notes in the digital applications people have to use.
We have examples in jazz where false notes lead to new innovations. So there are famous examples from, I think, Herbie Hancock, when he made a false note, and Miles gave him the look, and then he played something different, and Herbie Hancock thought, oh wow, so we are moving ahead. So the mistakes help us to go into maybe the right direction.
I like what Nick Cave's saying about. There's an interview on the internet where Nick Cave is really angry at AI. He says, I tried it myself, play a Nick Cave song. It was not bad. But he says, it was before his last album now, Wild God, big success. He said, I mean, it doesn't recognize the difficulty we had to find something new. And just before the false notes, there's the creativity, just before, as the example you were giving.
Right.
So in the false notes in my book, there's the origin of doing better. There is, if you say something that's not good, it's the beginning of something new. And then the third chapter, that is referring to your inspiration. There I really use the music thinking framework you made in your book, Power of Music Thinking. I recognized a lot of the things from your book in the work I've done. And there, I say, guys, enter the new way of thinking, of leadership, of collaboration, music thinking. Playing together as a rock and roll band, empathy, trust, jamming, listening, like the Beatles are jamming together, tuning. A lot of our digital products need to be tuned. Like good music, it takes time, hard work to integrate your personality. And then you get a repeatable product, like in the play. Like a good song, you can hear it hundreds, thousands of times. Bohemian Rhapsody, how about Dancing Queen? A digital product, once good made, you can reuse it. And then you get the performance. And we're live. Again, the human comes in and then it's another way. And it's a re-loop, always back. So that's the third chapter. And then I give my advice in the last chapter about what is a company. How can you make it concrete, the music thinking to a company, the governance, the vision, the team, all these things. I call the last chapter One Step Beyond, how to move one step beyond, referring to the Song of Madness.
Yeah, which, by the way, is, I think, the only one that's an instrumental.
True. It's a great song, eh?
And with a formidable tenor sax.
Exactly. You're playing sax.
So how did you find the music thinking and also the book? Because that's super interesting for me. You know, you do your stuff, you do your podcasts, you post something on LinkedIn or other social media, and it was really funny to hear from someone say, hey, there's someone using your music thinking in the book. And then you think, oh, right, nice.
I was convinced. I used a lot of music in my team. The 21st floor of the big tower in Brussels is Belfius Tower. 21st floor was a digital team. We redecorated the whole floor in Festival Land. Oh. Rock Werchter in the cafeteria, a Pukkelpop room, Tomorrowland room, the Ensemble Belgique room. My office was the backstage. So I liked music. There was really a music line all over the building around, where he had like this musical inspiration. So I used a lot of music into that story. And then I was looking up.
Hang on, I like that's interesting because you create the room literally for everyone to think differently. So it was not into your okay, it was some way into your face, but it was more in your background. But what I like is that you said that your office, and I think you were the CDO, right?
Yeah, I was a chief digital officer. Yeah.
You were the backstage.
Yeah,
and
backstage.
I think that's an interesting leadership thing. So I don't know if every C-level person would see his own thing as a backstage, but as we know, if we want to scale music, it's not just to have louder amplifiers or more players. We also need all the people that get the tickets, sell the tickets, open the doors, look for drinks, look that everyone is happy and that they also have a good sound. So I like very much the idea of the backstage.
I was not even aware. But I agree. I was not even aware.
I like that. So that's why I want to dive into a little bit. So if you're a backstage, if you create this situation, then you really understand that you are not in the front line. You are not singing. You are not the one that needs to do the coding or anything else. But you are the one to have to literally back up the people to do
and
the
make
good work.
sure. We decided upon the vision. We did not want Facebook, Apple to kill our bank. We said we can do as good as they do in the user design on the first screen, with very transactional, like in 1 or 2, 3 seconds, which now is a normal in banking on your smartphone. We can do the same. I'm not a technology guy. I'm a business manager. Mobile came. And the question is, how then can we make this vision right?
Nice.
And then I was so convinced when I stopped at Belfius 3 years ago that there was something in the music inspiration. Music is already a passion in my life. I think all my life. I don't play any notes, any instrument, but I live and breathe music. I have a musical ear. It's in my body. It's in my hand. It's everywhere. Spiritual. And I looked then on the internet, music as inspiration for digital leadership.
That was your Google prompt.
Google.
Oh.
First, you don't find a lot of stuff.
Okay.
So you're pushing it further. And then I came to a screenshot, one of your frameworks, a picture. And then I came on the website. And then I bought the book. So, you see, you have to...
That's how it works.
So I didn't find there was no SEO on it. You didn't buy advertising from the big tech.
Yeah, I did SEO, but I did not do the SEA.
Okay. So I looked at it because I was convinced, and then from that area, and then your podcast, the rest comes. And then I heard a lot of your podcast. I wrote the book, and I said, this is it. For me, that was a recognition. Nice. But you go way deeper as a music player, artist, scientist, as I can. For me to listen, tune, play, perform, and then live, and then that was already a very good milestone thing to get my message through, how to be a more digital leader as a company. So that's how I got to your book and your framework.
Nice. And with the framework, sometimes, I did the framework to sometimes give an answer to people to tell them how I think. So actually, literally, that's how I think. And then you see the interesting part is only if it resonates with other people. And at the first looks, it looks, let's say, rather complicated than easy. And it's not like, do this and then you're happy and rich. So it's more like, hey, this is the material, this is how it works. And it needs a little bit more explanation. So thank you for that part. So you're doing some kind of...
But I also looked at, if you look about books that inspired us, for me also, there's 2 books about the neuroscience of music. Your Brain on Music is one of them. And there is something. Music does way more than we think with our heads and within our heads.
Yeah.
It's not just one part of the brain. And then people listening to music use already some parts of the brain, the amygdala, the memories, the auditive, the clapping. But then people who play music, they're even motorically doing things with their hands, drumming, guitar, saxophone, and then in sync, milliseconds with another band, improvising, or even playing the same song together. So these artists even use more things in the brain. So also I was inspired then by that, even though I think there's not everything understood about the brain yet.
Yeah, and we had in the podcast, for example, if you want to know more about the brain, the one with Nina Kraus, A Love Letter to Sound. That's a really cool one. And Nina, she did more than 400 papers just on how the sound gets into the brain, and also how can you sonify what's in the brain. So that's a really special. And there's more and more. Even with one of the last episodes was about sonic branding, which actually is literally using sound in business. And that's so. for me, everything is connected, and that's why it's such a big field of different interesting things that go together.
Music is a language as important as the natural language, as mathematics. There's something, if you look at music before vinyl, before there was music distribution, it was live. From the doo-doo-da, when you were a kid, folk songs to get an identity of a people, to get together around the fire. That was only the music 150 years ago. Now music is everywhere distributed,
right,
digitally.
It's like water. I think that's also a David Bowie quote, isn't it? That he said, in the future, music will be something like you just open the tap and then it comes out. So literally, what
but it's true. It's like water and electricity. Now, music you can put in your ear, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, Tidal, whatever. And what I like is that there's never been more music distributed before. It has never been way more easier to listen to music. But there has never been so much live music in big stadiums and festivals before, all around the world. So people are reliving the need of the live music around the fire, the folky part. The uniting power of music is also coming back. There's studies that the Generation Z, which was born with digital, we became digital, but before digital, we had a normal world with CD, vinyl, that the importance of that live gathering to get the identity of the youngsters, the generation right, to feel united, to even feel transcendent, like Nick Cave is saying, and like Michael Kiwanuka, they're saying life is like, we want to create something music. There's now studies proving that Generation Z, who has lived music in the years, social media, digital in the years, that the importance of that live festival, live music, is so important to form their identity.
Right, and I think there's an important part, because if music is everywhere, for example, if you wear it on your headphone and you just walk out and have always your headphone on, so you don't even hear what's around you. But there's another thing. If you go to a concert, you're listening together with other people. And that's a real social thing. And it's not only about music, but also, as a tip, just sometimes take off your headphone and just listen what's already there. And do this to look at other people that are in the same situation. And in a concert, it's even cooler. And to add also... it's not only about the big concerts, the big music, the big money makers that also make enough money on Spotify, but it's also to find out the small venues and even start to play an instrument and just play for your loved ones or for everybody who wants to hear your song. I
even remember my granddad at his funeral. There was one trumpetist I will never forget. Sounds at that moment. So I agree.
Absolutely, the sound and the silence after.
So music gives a lot of the combining together, and that's what I like when Nick Cave is saying AI will not bring the live transcendent aspect. It can copy, but the uncertainty, the real people seeing each other, and that is almost coming back to, everybody knows the concert of Queen in Wembley. 30, 40, 50 years ago, there was no screens. There were no screens.
Right.
So you were 65,000 people in Wembley only to get connected with each other and to hear, because Queen was very far away. You could not see anything.
Yeah.
Cool, eh? I like that. Now all the music show was very visual, eh?
Yeah. But it's about the experience, to experience something together. And that is music.
That's transcendent.
Because you don't only hear with your ears, you hear with your whole body. It's an embodied listening.
But that is not described yet. So I have to read the 400 papers of Nina to see how far that is already described. And I think it's quite almost philosophical. One of the quotes I use in the book, it's about Nietzsche. So... one of his quotes is, life without music would be a mistake. It's in German, but I like it in English. And then if you look at it...
Leben ohne Musik ist ein Fehler.
Exactly. You could pronounce it very well. I could not do that. But then I looked it up. Why does a philosopher from few centuries ago is saying that? Normally, when a guy who studies philosophy and he speaks one sentence, he has studies for 10 years before he says the sentence. I looked it up, and he says, and it comes from the Greek gods and from yin and yang, Chinese philosophy. You have Apollo, the rational part. You need money, a house, safety to feel good, to make a good life. You need a job. But if you only have that part of the brain, the yin or the yang, and you don't have the Dionysus part, emotion, creativity, intuition, sensing, the yang part, the opposite, you have a boring life. You can have a lot of money, but you're missing a lot of sensing, intuition. And Nietzsche said, music is one of the most accessible ways for everybody to have that emotional side. You need imbalance in your life. And that's why he was saying life without music would be a mistake if you only have the rational part. I like that a lot.
Right, and that also brings us back to the beginning, because Nietzsche was for sure also a rebel in the way how he thought and how he how he acted. Because in the beginning he was very much with Richard Wagner, which was a rebel in that time, but later was, let's say, some kind of on a distance to Wagner, because Wagner went into a direction that he thought would not be the right one. So there's also, let's say, some kind of music critic in him.
Do you know that Nietzsche was a musician? He was a composer of classical music. Before he went for... He made, even young, 14, 15, 16, he was almost Amadeus. Like, he made musical compositions, and then he became philosopher, referring to music. Cool, eh? It's all in my book. So
it's like the music and the thinking.
Yeah, exactly. The thinking is the ratio, and the music is like, it's good. Yeah, okay. You need ratio. There's process engineering behind. You want to understand, also want to sense and feel what's happening.
Absolutely. So everything comes together. Hey, Geert, thank you. Maybe one thing to mention: your book is in Dutch and in French now.
And it will become available in English by this summer. So, musical thinking as inspiration for digital leadership. Rebel, yeah?
Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate this, because listening is one of the top leadership skills, and I feel honored about this. It is my mission to find, create, and share inspirations for meaningful collaboration based on music analogies. If you want to support this, please subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, or write a review on iTunes or Spotify. And more inspirations can be found on musicthinking.com. We have a blog, and you can download the Music Thinking Framework. And finally, I would love to hear your feedback. And if you need help with a business challenge, please reach out to me via email, podcast@musicthinking.com.